Fabio Wardley against Frazer Clarke. This is for the British title, Easter Sunday in London. And guys, I'm here to tell you that this fight has the potential to be a lot more competitive than what I'm seeing people predict it to be. You see, it almost feels like people are writing off Frazer Clarke's chances completely, and I think that's a big mistake. I think he's actually the toughest opponent that Fabio has faced in his career. I think he has the ability to potentially not only win the fight, but actually knock Fabio Wardley out cold in the center of the ring. But that's predicated on him making some significant changes from what we've seen in his last few outings. And it's not clear to me whether we'll see the best Frazer Clarke or whether we'll see something that's not quite good enough to get the job done, and Fabio is actually able to dispose of him in the manner that a lot of you guys are probably thinking he will. So what's going to happen? What does the footage say? Let's get into it. Now, the thing that jumps off the page to me right away when you look at Frazer Clarke, as far as his strengths, his weaknesses, and why I think he's Fabio's toughest opponent, he's actually going to fight at a very high volume. He's going to fight at a higher volume than anything Fabio's had to deal with up to this point. And he's going to actually do it while being the bigger and arguably stronger and more powerful guy. And that's going to potentially create a lot of problems because we haven't seen how Fabio is able to actually deal with someone who has an effective jab and a strong amateur background like Frazer Clarke does. Another thing when it comes to Frazer Clarke, which is a big problem in my opinion, probably his biggest weakness, it's the fact that up to this point, he hasn't shown a mean streak. And I also think he hasn't transitioned very well to the professional game in terms of how he throws his punches. He doesn't sit on his shots. He tends to try and score points. He doesn't really throw them with the same mean intentions that Fabio Wardley does. And that's why if you look at Fabio's knockouts and if you look at Frazer Clarke's knockouts, there's a big, big difference in the amount of damage that Fabio Wardley actually is able to do. He's got a lot more, basically, meanness behind his shots compared with Frazer Clarke, who a lot of his opponents have basically quit in the fight. They've been looking for an opportunity to go down on the canvas at the earliest opportunity. They've gotten injured. He has very few actual stoppages compared with Fabio, who has a lot. If you look at the Nick Webb fight, if you look at the Nathan Gorman fight, if you look at the David Adeleye fight and others, it's very obvious that Fabio is a much meaner, much more devastating puncher. And in fact, he actually reminds me a little bit of Lennox Lewis in the sense that if you look at Lennox Lewis in the Olympics, for example, when he fought Riddick Bowe in 1988, he lost the first round, and then in the second round, he just came out swinging and he won the fight. Fabio Wardley, he's not as good and he's not at Lennox Lewis skill level-wise or his level skill level-wise yet, but he has a similar will to win where when he gets hit, he comes back, he fights fire with fire, and he just gets the job done. And that's one of the big red flags as far as Frazer Clarke. He doesn't do that. If you look at Frazer in the Olympics against Bakadir Jalalov, and he knew that the referee was ready to potentially step in and stop the fight, and yet he didn't really go for it that much. He was still content, and this was in a 3-round fight, by the way, not a 12-rounder. He was still content to try to hold, spoil, and not really let his hands go that much. And that, to me, is very concerning, and it's Frazer's biggest weakness. Because neither guy has gone 12 rounds, but Frazer has shown significant stamina problems in several of his fights, in particular, his last one against Dave Allen. I mean, Dave Allen was in terrible shape, and Frazer Clarke was still struggling. And the problem with Frazer is, the more he struggles, his accuracy also goes down, his ability to output at a higher volume goes down, his power decreases. So it's all going to be downhill if Frazer Clarke comes into this fight out of shape. But if Frazer comes into this one in shape, losing maybe 30, 40 pounds at the similar weight to Fabio, 240, 250, and he's actually worked on developing a little bit more of a mean streak, number one, and number two, sitting on his shots and not just trying to score points like he would in the amateurs, then he's a very, very dangerous opponent when you combine that with the fact that he tends to fight at a higher volume early on than what Fabio is used to dealing with. So what else have we got to consider in terms of the strengths and weaknesses of both guys? Who's actually going to win this fight? Well, One area where I think it's going to be really in Fabio's favor is on the inside. In the inside exchanges, Frazer Clarke doesn't like to actually exchange on the inside. He kind of half-heartedly holds and then maybe throws a couple of punches, but the problem is he doesn't either prevent the opponent from landing any shots or actually do any damage of his own. Fabio Wardley, on the other hand, he's not afraid to fight fire with fire. You see, his whole style is basically based on sitting on the outside, looking for an opportunity while avoiding getting hit. He doesn't necessarily use his jab a ton, but he's a bit more of an ambush fighter. And when he does come onto the inside, he tends to let his hands go with real ferocity, and he doesn't waste punches just swinging all over the place and getting himself out of position. He's also very effective at moving his head out of the way so he doesn't take a lot of punishment. Now, one thing he does do, he ducks his head low, and that's going to potentially create an opportunity for Frazer, who does have a very good uppercut. So look on the inside when Fabio ducks underneath the hooks from Frazer Clarke. We've seen flashes from Frazer where he's actually able to throw some pretty fast, pretty effective uppercuts. In the Dave Allen fight, he did that a lot, and he got called out for some low blows, but that was because he was very fatigued and his accuracy went down the toilet. If he's got stamina in this one, on the inside, if he can actually exchange, could be a different story. So with all of that said, who do I think actually wins this fight? Do I think Fabio is simply going to be too good, or do I think Frazer actually makes these changes, comes in and surprises people and gets a big upset? It comes down to the fact that I simply haven't seen enough to suggest that Frazer Clarke has actually gone and worked on his stamina, come in leaner, and actually sit on his shots more, and frankly have more of a mean streak. If you see him come in at the weigh-in, if he's lost significant weight, different story. But until that happens, Fabio Wardley has shown significant improvement in his recent fights under Ben Davison, who in my opinion is one of the best trainers out there at the moment. I think they're going to have a very strong game plan. I think they're going to have analyzed Frazer Clarke's weaknesses and his strengths extensively. So I think this fight is going to end with a Fabio Wardley victory. I think it's going to be a decisive victory. And in fact, I think there's a high probability that Fabio actually wins by knockout in this fight. However, like I say, if you see Frazer coming in significantly lighter, significantly meaner, and having worked on punching like a professional and not like an amateur, it could be a whole different story, because he definitely has the physical tools to cause a lot of people problems in the heavyweight division if he sorts out his mentality and he sorts out his conditioning. So let me know, guys, in the comments who you have winning this one. Are you picking Fabio like me? Do you think Frazer comes in improved? Do you think he puts in a performance like he did against Sokolovsky, maybe even a better one? Because even if he fights like he did against Sokolovsky, by the way, he's going to still give Fabio more problems than most of his other opponents have. Who do you think gets it done? Let me know in the comments, guys. Thank you as always for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.